Valentine's Day had arrived, and the whole class was filled with excitement and anticipation. The girls were making eyes and whispering. The boys were giving them presents. I sat on the sidelines, feeling like an extra. When I got home, I collapsed on the living room couch. My mom, noticing my depressed state, asked me lovingly if everything was okay. I nodded and mumbled that I was going to spend the evening watching a movie and eating treats. I settled into the chair, opened a bag of chips, and turned on a horror movie I'd been meaning to watch. The February twilight was fading outside the window. The room was getting dark and spooky. Suddenly, my phone beeped, indicating an incoming message. I jumped in surprise and grabbed it. The message was from an unknown number. "Happy Valentine's Day. Hope you liked the gift." I frowned, thinking it was just another stupid prank. But my heart twisted with a bad feeling. After a few hours, I turned off the movie and went to my room. The house was quiet, and everyone was asleep. I crawled under the covers, but there was a persistent knocking at the window. I stood up, quietly pulled back the curtain, and leaned back sharply. A man with his mouth sewn shut stood in the courtyard, taking his time pounding on the window, now looking me straight in the eye. Stunned by the situation, I rushed to wake my parents. At first, of course, they thought I was imagining things, since I had watched a horror movie just before going to bed, and didn't know what I was imagining. But when they came into my room, their faces changed. That man was still there, still banging on the window. Mom started frantically looking for the phone to call the police. When the police arrived, the man was gone. Only traces of dirt and blood were left under my window. After collecting all the evidence, the inspector, finding no one around, wrote something in his notebook and drove away, leaving our family in an anxious state. Back in bed, I couldn't sleep for a long time, so I decided to read the news. Scrolling through the feed, I suddenly came across the loud headlines that 8 decapitated people had been found in my town in the last few hours. When I looked closer, I recognized some of them as 2 of my classmates. My eyes widened and my pulse quickened. I fell silent as I heard my own loud, intermittent breathing. Alarmed beyond belief, I jumped out of bed and ran to my parents' room. The room was empty, no sign of them. I ran all over the house, looking in every corner, the bathroom, the kitchen, the living room, but there was no one anywhere. Even their slippers and robes were missing from their usual places. As I ran out into the street, I looked around in despair. The street was deserted and quiet, with only the streetlights illuminating the road. Where could they have gone in the middle of the night? Ran through my mind. Tears came to my eyes. I felt all alone and defenseless. Unable to think of anything better to do, I ran to my friend's house. The cold night air burned my cheeks. I ran as fast as I could through my tears, recognizing the houses on both sides of the dark street. Suddenly, I heard a desperate cry in the distance. I shuddered but kept running, concentrating on my heavy breathing. Accelerating to the limit, I missed a rock in the road and twisted my foot. Without stopping for a second, I got up and walked quickly, limping. After a moment, a lump appeared on my leg, indicating that it had been dislocated. It was excruciatingly painful, and I stepped on the pavement for a moment before a sharp pain shot through my leg. Fortunately, I had a few minutes to walk, but then I heard someone running very fast toward me from the other end of the street. When I turned around, I was horrified to see the man with his mouth sewn shut. He had what looked like a machete in his hand. My heart sank into my heels. I rushed out, forgetting the pain and praying that my friend, or at least her relatives, would be home. Contrary to all expectations, from a distance, I saw my friend lying in the yard of her house, her parents bent over her, crying. The earlier screams I had heard while running probably belonged to the relatives of the monster's victims. Losing all sense of running and hiding somewhere, I turned around and met the stalker, who was no longer running, but dancing towards me. I was covered in goosebumps and sticky sweat. Sobbing, I raised my crying face and waited for my fate. But instead of the expected action, the man pulled something out of his jacket pocket and sloppily threw it under my feet. I slowly lowered my eyes and saw 2 clenched hands with my parents' wedding rings on their bloody fingers.